Trapped in the solemn, blighted abysses of hell after his failed rebellion against the Godhead, Satan famously laments in Paradise Lost that the mind can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. This is a worldview that presupposes that the mind can rise above the material circumstances and project its own essence out into the world. But that projection can be dangerous as well as liberating. We can become trapped in our minds, which can cultivate environments that increase our despair and increase our anxiety and cause us to be trapped in a fatalistic loop that leads us to become more extreme, more disaffected, more cynical, and thus more willing to take actions that are perhaps unhealthy. When the mind becomes isolated from that outside environment, distorting and twisting it, sick and warped, the mind can be a hideous enemy to our basic impulses to try and rebuild our connections with ourselves and the world around us in a time of great strife and turmoil. Claudia, in Season 4, showcases the most negative and disquieting after effects of the mind's warping effect. Material circumstances do indeed not determine the liquid amorphous workings of the mind, but that is not necessarily a positive. What sends Claudia over the edge? What causes her to commit so fully to Erebos' influence, to the scheming and manipulating that Erebos is doing, that she is willing to abandon all claims to morality, all claims of connection to her brother and her former love, Callum, in order to pursue Erebos' beguiling dark enchantments without any concern for how it might affect her or the world around her. I do not believe that she would have gone this way had she not been isolated for such a long time. While I do wish that we had gotten a bit more information about what had happened to Claudia in the last several years, the fractured and alienated state of her mind implies that she is, despite all her superficial similarities to the person she once was, all her silly jokes and the like, a fundamentally different person now. She is harder and colder. She's more apathetic about all these grand presentiments of morality and justice. It is true that she was never the most moral or selfless person before. We shouldn't forget that she committed to her father even after her father made decisions that destroyed any semblance of reasonableness in his claims and sent him tumbling over the edge of extremism, eventually turning his followers into dark magic zombies to serve the whims of Erebos, whims that he mistakenly thought were his own, so overwhelmed did he become by the influences of Erebos. She did try to kill Ezran, and we shouldn't forget that. But there is a fundamental difference between a few admittedly unnerving lapses in good judgment on her part and the fundamentally nihilistic person that she has become by Season 4. Even a montage could have helped showcase the extent of this transformation, but the effects of that transformation are nonetheless clear in the text of Season 4, perhaps most explicitly when she is talking to Soren. people have pointed out that Claudia seems far more anti-elf in her speech to Soren than she was in previous seasons, and this is true. Claudia has never liked elves, per se. She has always thought of them as a baleful influence that lords their superiority over humans and exploits their magical capacities to force humans to suffer. But a lot of these are stances that she picked up from her father. It had not seemed before that she harbored a deep anti-elven resentment that surpasses even Viren's. And she didn't before. I don't think there's reason to believe that, but she does now. Why? It's because she has been abandoned in this dark cave for years, with Erebos whispering in her ear, giving her instructions, and with very few other sources of wisdom and support. Claudia is left in a position where there are no moderating influences for her. There are no contradicting viewpoints. There is not even, apparently, a break from the drudgery and monotony of working tirelessly to bring Viren back from the dead. Instead, her life becomes monomaniac. It becomes obsessively focused on one single object. Her mind is allowed to freely warp and distort her experience of the world outside. It serves as its own little positive reinforcement chamber. And I don't say positive in a good way. I mean positive as in a positive feedback loop. As in, she has these resentments and these anxieties from what happened to her at the end of Season 3. And she does not quite know what to believe at this point. So when she hears all of these anti-elven thoughts, she starts to accept them, whether they're from Erebos or from the dark recesses of her own mind. There are no Soren-like moderating forces to contradict the force of these thoughts, so they work. They help her make sense of what she has experienced, even if it causes her to withdraw into a more rigid view of the world. And because she starts to accept these anti-elven ideas as fact, these thoughts multiply in her mind and they become more omnipresent. The mind, while it is not unaffected by its circumstances, can very much twist and shape those experiences in a way that can be beautiful or it can be very sordid and disorienting, as is the case of Claudia. She comes to embody a distorted parody of the values that Viren once held. Viren this season is much more reflective and doubtful. I wouldn't go so far as to say that he is repenting. He is not at the point now that he takes back all of his beliefs, nor necessarily should he, since a lot of those beliefs were founded. He just took them too far. He is rather at a stage in his life where he recognizes how transient life is, and he recognizes that all his efforts to attain power and status and influence created in him this burning desire to always search for the next horizon, search for the next achievement. He was never fully content. He was always chasing these aspirations that proved to be illusory, and he was never satisfied or content because of that. And so he's trying to make a move away from that kind of obsession that has sadly overtaken his daughter. He is not a fully changed person so much as he is one who fundamentally regrets the choices that he made. That's not the same thing. There is a difference. but it is nonetheless a major step forward for Viren. And he is fundamentally in a state of transience. He does not really know what to believe at this point. He becomes annoyed when Terry keeps on asking him for help, not because he hates Terry, quite the opposite. The surrogate father-son bond that develops between them, as flawed and incomplete as it is strangely sweet and one of my favorite inventions of Season 4. He doesn't like, rather, being called upon as a source of wisdom because he knows he's not. Everything he committed himself to has left him unfulfilled. He doesn't quite know what to do with that information, but he knows that he does not want to commit to the path laid out for them both by Claudia. He wants to pull Claudia back, or at least discourage her from being so monomaniacally committed to the path she's on, and yet she doesn't demur. She doesn't go back on her ideals. Also, people have said that it's a bit strange that Claudia is so attracted to Terry and so enthusiastic about being in a relationship with him when she is so ardently opposed to elves as a group. And yes, and I wish they had expanded on this relationship a little more, but it is very much in character for Claudia to have a sort of cognitive dissonance, to say and do things that are completely out of line with her giddy self that she is apparently still holding on to. She playfully uses dark magic to kill creatures in earlier seasons without reflecting on this or without really any acknowledgement that this is wrong. It's just a little fun game for her. At that point, she's not even necessarily immoral. She just has an amazing ability to compartmentalize, and that seems to be something she is sustaining even in Season 4. It'll be interesting to see when or if that starts to break down and she starts to have to face the contradictions in her life. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked yourself today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. What did you think of Claudia and Viren this season? They are compelling characters to me, as always. Viren's weary malaise contrast against Claudia's delirious enthusiasm formed a lot of really powerful dynamics that I hope the show builds on later. Anyway, tune in soon for the next analysis. We'll be coming soon. Promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.